The family chat was silent during my daughter's ICU fight, then something unexpected happened. Clapperboard opening hook. 41 members in the family group chat. I counted them while I sat outside the ICU at 2 in the morning. 41 people who had opinions about my life for years, about my choices, about who I was, about whether I was doing things right. And when my daughter was fighting for her life on the other side of that door, the chat had exactly 0 messages. 0. Not a single one. I had sent the message at 11:17. Nana is in the ICU. Severe allergic reaction, please pray. I had typed it sitting on a plastic chair in a hospital corridor with my hands shaking so badly I had to retype it 3 times. I had sent it because she was my daughter and she was 8 years old and she was in there and I don't know what I needed. Something. Some evidence that the people who had always had so much to say about my life had something to say now. The chat had gone quiet. Not one message, not a prayer, not a "we're thinking of you," nothing. I had sat with my phone in my hands and watched the screen, and the screen had stayed still, and I had understood something in those hours that I had been refusing to understand for years. And then my phone had buzzed. Not the family chat, a direct message from a number I had not expected. I just saw, "I'm on my way, don't be alone." That was all it said. And that was the beginning of everything that changed. Part 1: The Life I Had Built. My name is Vikram Anand, and I want to tell you about the life I had built before that night because the night makes more sense inside the context of what came before it. I was 36 years old. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Hyderabad that I had furnished slowly over 4 years, not because I couldn't afford to do it faster, but because I wanted each thing to be right, to be chosen, to belong. I worked as a senior architect at a firm that did institutional buildings, schools, community centers, the kind of work that I had gone into this field to do. The kind that is difficult and slow and matters in ways that are not always immediately visible. I had a daughter named Nana who was 8 years old and who was the most specific person I had ever known. She collected rocks, not casually, not as a phase, but with genuine taxonomy, with a notebook in which she recorded where each rock had been found and what she believed it was made of and what she thought it looked like. She had opinions about breakfast. She could identify 17 species of birds by call alone, which she had taught herself from a library book over the course of one summer with a focus that I recognized because I had it too. She was my daughter in the specific ways that matter, not just biologically but in the ways that come from years of daily presence, from being the person who answered her questions at 6 in the morning and read her to sleep at night and drove her to school and knew which of her friends she actually liked versus which ones she was politely tolerating. I raised her largely alone. Her mother, we had been together briefly, we had been young, we had parted without drama and with a genuine mutual recognition that we were better as co-parents than anything else. Nana spent alternating weeks with each of us. On my weeks, she was the whole shape of the evenings. I want to tell you also about my family because the family chat has context. I came from a large family in the specific North Indian way, extensive, opinionated, warm, in the uneven way of people who love loudly and conditionally in roughly equal measure. I had 2 brothers, several cousins, aunts and uncles whose interest in my life fluctuated in inverse proportion to how well things appeared to be going. When things were fine, the interest was moderate and pleasant. When things were complicated, the interest intensified and became primarily concerned with what had gone wrong and who was responsible. My life had, by the family's measure, been complicated for about 5 years. Not because of Nana, they loved Nana, or they loved the idea of Nana, the way people love children who are connected to them by blood but not by daily presence. Not because of my career, which was solid and respected and produced buildings they could point at. Because of who I was. I had spent most of my 30s understanding something about myself that I had been slow to articulate and slower to share. I had eventually shared it, not in a single announcement, not dramatically, but in the gradual way of someone who was tired of managing the gap between what was true and what was presented. I had told my closest friend first, then my co-parent, who had received it with the particular unsurprised warmth of someone who had suspected for years. Then eventually my family. The family's response had been what I had expected and also somehow worse than I had expected. Not violent, not dramatic, my family was not that kind of family, but there had been a specific rearrangement of how I was related to, the way certain topics were avoided, the way certain gatherings felt slightly different in my presence, the way I could feel in a room of 40 people who shared my blood, the precise temperature of being tolerated rather than embraced. The family chat was a microcosm of this. A constant background hum of announcements and jokes and congratulations and religious forewords, 41 members, constant activity, until the moment I sent a message about Naina in the ICU and the chat went silent for the first time I could remember. I need to tell you about Karen before I tell you what happened after that message. Karen Maida had come into my life 8 months before the ICU night, and he had done it in the specific understated way that the most significant things sometimes arrive. Not with announcement, not with obvious drama, just by being suddenly there. He was the project manager on a community center build that my firm had been commissioned for in a neighborhood on the eastern edge of the city. I was the lead architect. We had met at the site kickoff meeting, a room full of people including the client committee, the engineering team, the contractors, and Karen, who had been brought in by the client organization to manage the project timeline and stakeholder relationships. He was 34, tall, with a particular way of being still in a room that I had noticed immediately, not passive stillness, but the stillness of someone who was paying close attention without broadcasting it. He had a notebook that he wrote in constantly, not on his phone like most people managed notes, an actual notebook with a pen, and the notes were organized in a system I could not quite decode from across the table, but that clearly worked because his recall of project details was extraordinary. He was also, I noticed over the first few meetings, someone who noticed things about people, not intrusively, not in the way that makes you feel watched, in the way that means when something matters to someone, he remembers it. He had noticed in our second meeting that I looked at the site's relationship to the street differently from how the engineering team did, that I was thinking about how people would arrive on foot, how the entrance would feel at different times of day. He had said nothing about it in that meeting. In the following week, he had sent me a note with some pedestrian flow data from the neighborhood that he had pulled from the city planning database with no explanation, just thought this might be useful for the entrance approach. I had looked at the data for a long time. Then I had written back, "This is exactly what I needed, how did you know?" He had replied, "You kept looking at the corner of the site in the second meeting, the corner that faces the main pedestrian route." I had put my phone down. This was the beginning. Part 2, 8 months. Let me tell you what 8 months of working alongside someone, slowly and carefully, looks like. It looks like site visits in the early morning when the light is right and the street is quiet and you can understand how the building is going to sit in the world. It looks like disagreements about timeline that are actually about different ways of caring about the same outcome, him caring about the community that needs the building to open, me caring about the building being right when it does. It looks like figuring out that the disagreements are not actually disagreements, that they are the same concern seen from different angles, and the thing to do is put the angles together. It looks like a Tuesday afternoon when the contractor has brought the wrong material and the schedule is at risk, and we are both standing in the site office going through options. And at some point we have both been leaning over the same plan for long enough that I am acutely aware of exactly how close we are. And he looks up at exactly the same moment I do, and neither of us says anything for a second, and then he says very quietly, "Third option," and I say, "Yes," and we go back to the plan. It looks like his telling me once about a project he had managed 3 years ago that had gone wrong, not the facts of it but the feeling of it, the specific weight of being responsible for something that matters and watching it come apart. He had told me this on a rooftop during a break in a long community stakeholder meeting, both of us standing with cold chai in the winter afternoon, and he had said it in the careful way of someone who does not usually offer this kind of information and is watching to see how it lands. It landed the way it was intended. I had told him about a building of mine that had been compromised by budget cuts in ways I had been unable to prevent, and the specific grief of watching something you designed with care become something lesser. He had listened with his whole attention. We had stood there a while after that, not talking, the city below us, the meeting continuing without us for those few minutes. Same thing, he had said finally, different form. Yes, I had said. We had gone back in. The complication was Naina. Not in the way you might think. Naina was not a complication in herself. She was, if anything, the clearest thing in my life, the most uncomplicated love I had ever experienced. The complication was the question of what it meant to let someone into the part of my life where she was. I had been careful about this. Protective, some people might say. The daily reality of being a single father, the schedule built around school and her weeks, and the specific logistics of a life organized around a child was not something I shared casually. It was not that I was hiding it, it was that it was precious in a way that made me slow. Karen had met Naina exactly once in the 7 months before the ICU night. A Saturday afternoon when I had brought her to the community center site because she had asked to see what I was building and it was a good day for it, the concrete work finished and the shell visible and the space beginning to feel like what it was going to be. She had walked through the space with the focused attention she brought to her rock collection, seriously, specifically, asking questions that were better than most adult questions. What is this room for? How does the light come in here? Why is this wall at this angle? I had answered each one as fully as I would have answered a colleague. Karen had been at the site. He had watched the two of us move through the space for a while before coming over. He had introduced himself to Naina in the way he introduced himself to everyone, simply, without performance. She had looked at him assessingly and said, "Are you the one who makes sure my father's buildings get built on time?" "I try," he had said. "He's bad with deadlines," she had said. "I know," he had said. She had almost smiled, then she had gone back to examining the wall angle. He had looked at me, I had looked at him, neither of us said anything. Part 3. The night. Naina's allergic reaction happened on a Thursday evening. She was at a friend's birthday party. I had dropped her off, confirmed the details, exchanged numbers with the parents as I always did. The reaction was to something in the food, something that nobody had known she was allergic to because she had never encountered it in a sufficient quantity before. The parents had called me at 9:47. I had been at my drafting table. I had heard the word ambulance, and I had been in my car before the call ended. The hospital was 20 minutes away. I drove it in 12. I do not entirely remember the driving. She was in the ICU by the time I arrived. Stable, they said, that word stable, which sounds reassuring and is also the specific vocabulary of people who want you to know that things are not good but are not the worst. They said she was responding. They said they were monitoring. They said I should sit in the waiting area. I sat in the waiting area. At 11:17, I had sent the message to the family chat. At 11:19, I had opened the chat again to check. 0 messages. By 2 in the morning, still nothing. 41 people, 0 messages. And then the direct message. I just saw, "I'm on my way, don't be alone." I stared at it for a long moment. Karen was not in the family chat. We were colleagues turned something not yet fully named. He had seen, I realized, going back to check, a post I had made on a personal social media account that I had forgotten I had connected to work contacts. A post asking for prayers, sent in the same desperate scatter as the family message, reaching for anyone. He had seen it. He was on his way. He arrived at 2:30 in the morning. He came through the hospital corridor in the specific way he moved through spaces, purposeful, unhurried, taking in the environment. He was wearing the clothes of someone who had not been planning to go anywhere, just whatever he had been wearing at home, and he had clearly come directly and quickly. He sat down beside me. Not across from me, not at a careful professional distance. Beside me, the chair directly next to mine, close enough that I was aware of his presence in the way you are aware of warmth. He did not say anything immediately. He looked at the ICU doors the way I had been looking at them, and the silence it was not the silence of the family chat, it was a completely different kind of silence, the kind that is full rather than empty. "How long has she been in there?" he said. "Since 10, I said. "They say she's stable." He nodded. "Have you eaten anything?" he said. "No," I said. He stood up and went and found the hospital canteen at 2:30 in the morning, which required some doing, and came back with 2 chai cups and something wrapped in paper that turned out to be a very old samosa that had clearly been sitting there since the afternoon. He put 1 chai in my hand. He set the samosa between us. He sat back down. "You don't have to eat the samosa," he said. "It's probably terrible, but the chai is real." I looked at the chai. "Thank you," I said. "For the chai," he said. "For coming," I said. He looked at the ICU doors. "I couldn't not," he said simply, and that was all. We sat there until 4 in the morning when the doctor came out and said Naina's reaction was fully under control. She was sleeping. I could see her in an hour. I had put my face in my hands and breathed. Karen had put his hand on my back, not a dramatic gesture, just his hand, steady and present, and said nothing, which was exactly right. Part 4. The morning after. I saw Naina at 5 in the morning. She was small against the hospital bed and her breathing was even and her rock notebook was not there, which was the most disorienting thing, her hands empty of the thing they were usually holding. I sat beside her and held her hand until it was full morning and the nurses said she was doing well and I should go home and rest. I came out of the ICU to find Karen still there. He had been there for 6 hours. He was asleep in the plastic chair, his notebook in his lap, his pen still in his hand, his head at the uncomfortable angle of someone who fell asleep without intending to. I stood and looked at him for a long moment. Then I sat in the chair beside him, not waking him, and I took out my phone and opened the family chat. 41 members. Now in the morning there were messages 9 hours after I had sent mine. My aunt had posted a prayer forward, one of my brothers had sent hope she is okay, a cousin had reacted with a heart emoji. I read them, I put my phone away. Karen woke up about 20 minutes later with the disoriented blink of someone not sure where they are, and then he saw me and the orientation returned. She's okay, I said, stable, sleeping. He exhaled. Good, he said, and then, with the slight roughness of someone who slept 6 hours in a plastic chair, I'm sorry, I should have gone home. Why, I said. He looked at me. You stayed, I said, I stopped, started again. You stayed when 41 people who are supposed to be my family said nothing for 9 hours. He was quiet. I saw the message at 11:30, he said, I wasn't going to not come. I know, I said. We sat in the hospital corridor in the early morning, both of us tired, the specific intimacy of a night that had stripped everything down to its essential weight. Karen, I said. Yes, he said. Thank you, I said, not the automatic thank you of politeness, the real kind, the kind that carries weight. He looked at me with those steady eyes. Don't thank me, he said, this is not something you thank someone for. I looked at him for a long moment. Then what is it, I said. He held my gaze. It's just what you do, he said. When someone matters. The corridor was quiet, the morning light was coming through the windows at the end of the hall. I looked away first, but the words stayed. Part 5. What the silence revealed. Naina came home 3 days later with a new allergy alert bracelet and approximately 40 questions about the medical process that she had saved up during her hospital stay, which she now produced in rapid sequence while I drove her home. What exactly is epinephrine and how does it work? Why do they call it a reaction when it's really more of an overreaction? Is the anaphylaxis the reaction, or is the anaphylaxis what causes the reaction? Why are hospital beds adjustable but hospital chairs aren't when the people in the chairs are there just as long? I answered each one as fully as I could. By the time we got home, my voice was rough from talking and I had never been so relieved in my life. She slept for most of that first afternoon, which was not like her but was right, and I sat in the chair beside her bed and let myself, finally, feel the full weight of the last 3 days. And then I thought about the family chat. I want to be precise about what I decided and when I decided it, because this is the part that is sometimes described as revenge but is really something more specific than that. I did not feel rage about the silence. I had moved past the stage of expecting the family to be other than what it was. That particular grieving process had happened slowly over years, and the ICU night had not reopened it so much as closed it. What I felt, sitting in the chair beside Naina's sleeping form, was something cleaner than rage. Clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when you have been handed, without ambiguity, the precise information you needed. 41 people, 9 hours, 0 messages. And one person, not in the family chat, who came at 2:30 in the morning and stayed until morning and slept in a plastic chair and was still there when I came out. The clarity was about proportion, about where I had been spending energy that was finite, about what I was going to do with the time and attention that I had been directing, for years, toward people who disappeared when the reality of my life required actual presence. I opened the family chat. I did not write anything dramatic, I did not write anything accusatory, I removed myself from the group. That was all. The responses came within 20 minutes. My eldest brother called first. Did you leave the chat by accident? No, I said. Vikram. Naina is home, I said. She's recovering, thank you for the message this morning. A pause, he heard the thing in my voice. We were worried, he said. I know, I said, but worried looks different from silent. He was quiet. I'm not angry, I said, I needed to do something concrete about where things are. The chat is a concrete thing. He tried for another few minutes. He was not a bad man, none of them were bad people. They were people who had not done the work of rearranging themselves, who had let comfort dictate their presence, who had gone silent when presence was required. That was true, and it was also not the whole of who they were, and I was capable of holding both things. But the chat was done. Part 6: The Project and the Person. The community center was 4 months from completion when the ICU night happened. Working with Karen in the weeks after was different. Not dramatically, the project was the project, the work was the work, the site visits and the meetings and the stakeholder calls continued with the same professional structure. But something had shifted in the space between us that we were both aware of and neither of us had yet named. He asked about Naina at the start of every site visit. Not performatively, one question direct, and then he listened to the answer. She had made him a card while she was recovering, which I had found on my kitchen table one morning with my name on the outside, and inside a very detailed drawing of the community center as she imagined it would look when finished, with small figures of people using it, and a note that said, "For the man who brought my father chai." I had not planned to show it to him, but I had brought it to the site one day without entirely deciding to. He had held it very carefully. He had looked at it for a long time. "She drew the entrance exactly right," he said finally, "the angle of approach." "She has a good eye," I said. "She does," he said. He handed the card back carefully. "Thank you for showing me." "Thank you for the chai," I said, which was not really about the chai. He met my eyes. "I know," he said, which was not really about the chai either. The jealousy, and I want to include this because it happened and it mattered, came from a direction I had not anticipated. A new member of the client committee arrived for the monthly progress meeting in month 7. His name was Rohan. He was young and confident and clearly interested in the project in the specific way of someone who was also interested in Karen. He directed his questions primarily at Karen, found reasons to linger after the meeting ended, laughed too easily at things Karen said. I had sat in that meeting and watched and had felt something in my chest that I recognized after a moment as jealousy, and had then felt irritated at myself for recognizing it because I had no formal standing to feel it. Karen, for his part, had been professionally pleasant to Rohan and had directed several of the questions back to me. "That's really Vikram's area, let me have him take that," in the practiced way of someone who knew where the work belonged. Rohan had glanced at me with slightly less interest. After the meeting, when everyone else had gone, Karen had said without preamble while writing in his notebook, "He's going to be at the next 3 meetings." "I know," I said. "It doesn't," he stopped, wrote something, "the project is on track." "I know that too," I said. He looked up from the notebook. "Vikram," he said. "Yes," I said. He looked at me for a moment in the specific way he had, still, direct, all his attention. "The project is on track," he said again, but he was not talking about the project. I looked at him. "I know," I said, and I meant it. Part 7: Naina asks a question. Children have a way of asking the things adults have been not asking. Naina was 9 by this time. Her birthday had come while she was recovering. We had celebrated at home with her favorite meal and her rock collection arrayed along the windowsill in the particular order she favored. She was fully recovered, fully herself, the rock notebook back in her hands and the bird calls back in her vocabulary. She asked me on a Sunday morning while we were eating breakfast in the straightforward way she asked all her questions, "Is Karen uncle your friend?" "Yes," I said. "A work friend or an actual friend?" she said. "What's the difference?" I said. "Work friends are people you're nice to because you have to be," she said. "Actual friends are people you choose." I looked at her. "An actual friend," I said. She ate her paratha. "He came to the hospital," she said. "Yes," I said. "In the middle of the night," she said. "Yes." "And he stayed," she said. "Yes." She chewed, considered. "That's more than a friend," she said, matter-of-factly, the way she stated geological facts. "Naina," I said. "I'm not asking you to explain it," she said, with the patience of someone who is 9 and occasionally has to manage adults. "I'm just saying what I observed." She went back to her paratha. I looked out the window. Out of the mouths of people who collect rocks and observe birds and ask better questions than most adults. Part 8: The Thing That Almost Broke It. I need to tell you about what happened in month 9 because this is the part that almost undid everything, and because I want to be honest about the fact that I was responsible for it. The community center was in its final stretch. The pressure of those last weeks, the finishing details that always took longer than planned, the client committee's last-minute anxieties, the contractor issues that are universal to the final month of any build had created a specific stress in the working relationship. We were both tired. We were both at the end of a long effort, and in that tiredness I made a mistake. There was a stakeholder meeting in which the client committee raised concerns about the timeline for the final punch list items. The concerns were not unreasonable, but the way they were framed put the project management, Karen's role, in an uncomfortable position. Karen had responded carefully, had laid out the plan, had been thorough. And afterward, when we were alone in the site office, I had said something I should not have said. I had been tired and frustrated, and the words had come out wrong, something about whether the timeline expectations had been properly managed earlier in the project. Something that, in its tired clumsiness, sounded like criticism of Karen's management when what I meant was frustration at the client. He had gone very still. He had said quietly, "That's not what happened and you know it." I know, I had said too quickly, "I just meant." "I know what you meant," he had said, "but what you said is what you said." He had closed his notebook and left the site office. We had not spoken for 2 days beyond what the project required, 2 days of professional email and necessary coordination and nothing else. The specific cold of a space that had been warm and is now not. I had felt it like a physical thing. On the third day I had gone to his office. He was at his desk when I knocked. He looked up. "Can I come in?" I said. A pause, then yes. I came in and sat in the chair across from his desk, and I said something careless and unfair. It was not what I meant, but it came out wrong and I didn't correct it immediately, which made it worse. "I'm sorry." He looked at me. "The timeline management on this project has been exceptional," I said. "You have held an extremely complex stakeholder situation together for 9 months, and the building is almost finished, and that is in significant part because of your work." I should have said that in the meeting instead of saying what I said. He was quiet for a moment. "You were tired," he said. "That's not an excuse," I said. "It's a reason, and reasons don't excuse things." He looked at his desk. "I know you didn't mean it the way it came out," he said, "but you're right that what is said is what is said." "Yes," I said. "And I should have, instead of going silent, I should have told you directly in the moment that it landed badly." "You did tell me," I said. "You said exactly that." "And then I went silent for 2 days," he said. "We both handled it imperfectly," I said. He looked at me. The stillness he had, the particular focused quality of his attention, was very present. "Vikram," he said. "Yes," I said. He stopped, started again. "The way we talk to each other, what we are to each other. I don't have a structure for it, and I think the absence of structure is making things harder." I looked at him. "What kind of structure?" I said. "An honest one," he said. "One that acknowledges what this actually is rather than what we're calling it." The office was quiet. "What do you think it is?" I said. He held my gaze for a long moment. "I think you know what I think it is," he said. I looked at my hands, then at him. "I have a daughter," I said, "and a family situation that is complicated, and a professional context that requires care, and I stopped. "I have been afraid, for reasons that feel real to me even when I know they are partly just fear." "I know," he said. "The ICU night," I said. "Yes," he said. "That was the clearest I have ever seen things," I said. "Who was there and who wasn't, what mattered, and what I felt when I saw you in that corridor." "Vikram," he said gently. "I'm not very good at this," I said. "I know," he said, "neither am I." A pause. "But I think we could be," he said, "if we tried honestly." I looked at him for a long moment. "After the building is done," I said, "the professional context needs to be fully resolved first." 3 weeks, he said. 3 weeks, I said. He picked up his pen. "Now," he said, "the punch list." We worked. Part 9: The opening. The community center opened on a Saturday in March. These openings are always a particular kind of event. The client committee, the local officials, the people from the neighborhood who will actually use the building, the contractors, the architects, the project managers. Speeches and photographs, and the particular collective exhale of something that was planned and built and is now real. I had brought Naina. She had dressed herself with the care she brought to significant occasions, her best clothes, her rock notebook in her bag because she brought it everywhere, her bird call knowledge ready to deploy if birds were involved. She had held my hand when we arrived and then, upon entering, had let go immediately and gone to examine the entrance wall angle she had drawn in the card. I had watched her and I had felt the specific fullness of a moment that is both professional and personal at the same time, both what you built and who you brought. Karen had found me during the reception portion. The speeches were done. People were moving through the spaces with the particular pleasure of a building that works, the light doing what light in a good building does, the spaces feeling right, the entrance from the street feeling the way I had imagined it when I was looking at that corner in the second meeting. "It's good," he said. "It's very good," I said. We stood in the main hall and looked at it. This thing we had spent 9 months building, this community center in a neighborhood that needed it, this concrete evidence that careful work and genuine care produce something lasting. "Nana is examining the wall," he said. "She's been looking forward to verifying her drawing," I said. He almost smiled. "Is it accurate?" "Remarkably," I said. He looked at me. "Vikram," he said. 3 weeks was 3 weeks ago," I said. "Yes," he said. "The professional context is resolved," I said. "The project is complete." "Yes," he said. We stood in the hall of the community center in the March afternoon light, people moving around us, Nana across the room with her notebook, the building all around us real and finished and belonging to the neighborhood now. "Dinner," I said. "Tonight, not a meeting, not a site visit, dinner." He looked at me for a long moment with the still, focused quality that I had come to understand was not blankness but the opposite, complete attention. "Yes," he said. Part 10. What happened at dinner? I am not going to tell you everything that was said at dinner because some things belong to the people who said them and not to a story, but I will tell you the shape of it. We went to a place in the old part of the city that was quiet on Saturday evenings and had good food and tables far enough apart for real conversation. We talked for 3 hours. We talked about the project and about what came next for both of us professionally, but mostly we talked about the things we had been not quite talking about for 9 months. The careful things, the real things, the things that had been accumulating under the professional surface. He told me about his family, about a version of the same complicated calculation I had made, the weight of being known fully by people you love, the specific cost of being only partly known. He told me about a relationship 3 years ago that had ended in the specific way of things that cannot work within the structure available to them. He told me this with the directness he brought to everything, not asking for sympathy, just offering information, making the exchange real. I told him about Nana, not the version I offered professionally. I have a daughter, she's 8, she's well, the real version. The morning routines and the rock taxonomy and the bird calls and the way she asked questions that were better than adult questions. The specific daily reality of loving someone that completely and building a life around that love. He listened to all of it, really listened, in the way he had of giving you his whole attention without making you feel observed. At the end of the evening, standing outside on the street, the city doing its night things around us, he said, "Nana told you something, after the hospital." I looked at him. "How do you know?" "Because something shifted after she came home," he said. "The way you looked at me changed slightly. I've been trying to understand what changed." I looked at the street. "She said it was more than a friend," I said, "based on the available evidence." He was quiet for a moment. "She's right," he said, simply. "Yes," I said. We stood on the street. The evening was cool. The city was all around us. "I don't want to manage this," I said. "I've spent years managing things, what I show, what I say, what I let be visible. I'm tired of managing." "Then don't," he said. "It's not that simple." "I know," he said, "but it can start simple. It can start with dinner and honesty and seeing what happens." I looked at him. "Nana would like you," I said. "She already does based on the card, but she would like you more if she knew you properly." Something crossed his face that was open and careful at the same time. "I'd like that," he said. "This is slow," I said. "It has to be slow because of her, because of what is responsible." "I know," he said. "Slow is fine. Slow means you're building something instead of rushing towards something." I looked at him for a long moment. "You said that like you've thought about it," I said. "I've thought about most things involving you," he said, directly, simply, with the matter-of-factness of someone offering a true statement and not a performance. The street was quiet for a moment. "Good night," I said. Good night, he said. Neither of us moved immediately. Then I turned and walked to my car, and I sat in it for a moment before starting it, looking at nothing, feeling the shape of something beginning. Part 11, The Family Revisited. I want to tell you what happened with the family because this is called a revenge story and the revenge needs its accounting. The revenge was not dramatic, it was not a confrontation or a speech or a moment of public vindication. The revenge was, as it often is when it is real, just the continued living of a life that didn't need their permission. My brother called again 2 weeks after I left the chat. We talked for a long time, the longest conversation he and I had had in years. He said things that were imperfect and also genuine. He said he hadn't known what to say that night. He said he was aware that not saying anything was worse. He said he was trying to understand things he had not tried to understand before and that the trying was slow but real. I listened. I told him what I could. I told him that I was not interested in a relationship built on managed distance, that if there was going to be a relationship, it had to be one where Naina's father was fully present and not partially present depending on the room. He said he understood. We are still in the process. It is not resolved. Families do not resolve in a single conversation, but the process is happening and it is happening honestly, which is more than I had 2 years ago. My aunt, one of the ones who had posted the prayer forward at 9 in the morning, sent me a long message. I read it. I replied briefly. I did not add her back to the chat, not because I was being punishing, but because I was no longer interested in the group chat as a substitute for actual relationship. Some of the family members I have simply let go, not dramatically, just they have remained where they are and I have moved and the distance is what it is. This is not revenge, this is proportion. Part 12, The Morning That Mattered. 6 months after the community center opened. Naina is 9 years old and has added 12 rocks to the collection and has learned to identify 2 more bird species and has started recently to teach herself the basics of architectural drawing from a library book, which she has not told me about because she wants to show me the results when they are ready. I know because I found the book. I have said nothing, I am waiting. Heron has been part of our Sundays for 4 months. Not every Sunday, slowly, deliberately, in the patient way that he brings to things that matter. He comes for breakfast sometimes. He has learned that Naina takes her parada very seriously and that the correct response to her geological questions is a genuine attempt at the answer, not a dismissal. He has learned the rock notebook and the bird calls and the morning routine. Naina has taught him 3 bird calls. He has been practicing. I watched him practice the black kite call in my kitchen last Sunday while Naina supervised with the critical focus she brought to all learning, and I felt something that I want to describe accurately. Not the dramatic feeling of the ICU corridor, not the charged thing of the community center hall, something quieter and more fundamental than both. Something that had the particular quality of things that are not going to go away, solid, present, belonging to the landscape of the days. He caught me looking. That was wrong, he said. A little, I said. Not enough, Naina said to him, the second syllable needs more like this. She demonstrated. He tried again, better. Naina considered him. Acceptable, she said, which from Naina is high praise. He looked at me over her head, something in his face that was warm and private and fully present. I looked back at him. Outside the window, a black kite was doing exactly what black kites do on Sunday mornings in this city, circling, patient, reading the thermals with the ease of something that has always known how to navigate the air it was given. Clapperboard final hook. The family chat had 41 members and 0 messages for 9 hours while my daughter fought in the ICU. One person not in the chat came at 2:30 in the morning, slept in a plastic chair, was still there when I came out. I had spent years directing energy toward people whose love had conditions attached that I could not meet. I had made myself smaller in rooms that required smallness. I had waited for permission that was never going to come in the form I needed it. And in the silence of that hospital corridor, in the specific, unmistakable silence of 41 people going quiet, I understood something I had been refusing to understand. The silence was information, the most honest thing they had ever told me. And the chai in the dark was also information. I chose to read them both. Naina still collects rocks. She is now teaching herself architectural drawing. She has declared that the community center my firm built is structurally and aesthetically acceptable, which I have framed in my head as the greatest professional review I have ever received. She has also informed me with the matter-of-fact certainty of someone who observes evidence and draws conclusions that Karen Uncle is going to need to learn at least 5 more bird calls before she will consider his education complete. He has accepted this requirement. The thermals are good this morning. We are learning to navigate them. If this story found the thing you needed to hear, if you have ever sat in a corridor counting silences and found your answer there, like it, share it with someone who is still counting, and subscribe. Tell me in the comments, what did the silence finally teach you? And one last question. There is a moment 3 months from now at a family gathering I did not plan to attend but did, where something happens that none of us expected. Where someone from the 41 does something that changes the shape of what I thought was already decided. Should I tell you what they did? Part 2 is coming, eyes. Subscribe, you will not want to miss it. The Revenge Chronicles.